The houses we build are way too big. We have to stop building so many large homes, and we need to cut the size of our average home by 28%. That's according to the latest report from a construction body, and they're suggesting that we should discourage the construction of detached homes. We should discourage the construction of semi-detached homes, and instead we should build tens of thousands of terraced homes. Why is that? Well, this is apparently the only way that we are going to achieve our climate goals as a country. And so I have a feeling this is going to be one of the more controversial episodes. And so without further ado, let's get into the show. You are listening to Behind the Facade, and I'm your host, Gavin J. Gallagher. On this podcast, I explore the mental and emotional game often playing out subconsciously both in your mind and the mind of everyone else in the real estate or property investment market. The key to success in this game is to master your mindset and your behavior, to take control of your thoughts, your emotions, and most importantly, your ego. Welcome to the show. All right, guys, quick update before I get into the show. First of all, the Mo is coming along nicely, and it's going to be your last chance, A, to see it, and B, to contribute to my Movember fundraising campaign. As I mentioned in the last episode, or I'm not sure, was it the previous episode, this has all been done for men's mental health and suicide prevention. So I'm putting a link down in the show notes below, or in the description below, and you can just find it there. And even just €5-10, anything would be really appreciated. Quick update as well. As of, I'm recording this on the 28th of November, so it's Monday, and I've just seen that BlockFi has filed for bankruptcy, Chapter 11 bankruptcy. And this is, first of all, we talked about FTX and the crypto collapse, and I did say that this is going to have this kind of knock-on impact. There is the first one, and we are going to see a lot more of this, in my opinion. And the really dangerous thing that I'm seeing is that these guys are putting out tweets and information into the market saying that your money is perfectly safe, don't need to withdraw your money. And less than 24 hours later, they are filing for bankruptcy. So literally, you're being assured that your money is safe, and then it's not safe. It's gone. And so if you're one of those people that is not listening to the news, and you have money tied up in an exchange or any of those kind of crypto investments, I would be really, really careful, and I would get my money out fast. All right, the next thing I want to ask you guys is for a little bit of feedback. It would be really, really appreciated. I'm trying to figure out a couple of things, and it's about what kind of podcast or videos you'd like to see more of. The reason I'm asking is it's two or threefold, because in the past week or so, the video that I made, the video I posted on YouTube, which is of the podcast episode number 133, and that is on the fact that the housing crisis is about to get a lot worse. Is it 133 or I can't remember the number, but I said that why the housing crisis is about to get a lot worse. And that I posted it to YouTube, and the video has kind of blown up actually. It's getting about 10 times the number of views that my normal videos do. And so I said, I think, God, is that a really popular topic that I need to make more of? Or is that something that you guys are kind of getting sick of hearing about? And so it's really just to get some feedback from you. Do you want to hear more about the housing crisis? Do you want to hear less about the housing crisis? And if that's the case, what do you want to hear more of? Would you like to see or hear from more guests? The guest interviews, I understand, were popular in the past. Or do you want to hear more of the kind of mindset stuff that I've covered in the past? Another reason I asked that is that I was speaking to some people yesterday, and they were asking me, we were talking about my morning rituals and the kind of stuff that I do that allows me to kind of stay on top of my game. And they were kind of saying, geez, Gavin, have you ever created content around this kind of stuff, like your morning routine and all of those kind of your rituals that you kind of deal with? Because he said, it is super interesting. And like, I think a lot of people would resonate with that. And I was thinking, is it super interesting? I mean, it's super interesting for me if I'm into it, and it's super interesting for my friend who I'm speaking to. But for you guys listening in, the multitude of people that come here for property investment, real estate investment advice, do you want to hear about productivity, morning rituals, how to kind of become or stay a top performer, how to succeed, and how to kind of stay at top of your game? Let me know. I would be really interested to hear your views. And one of the reasons I'm asking this as well is just, I like to keep things fresh. I like to keep the content updated, and I like to make sure that I'm talking about things that people want to hear. And part of me also thinks that all of this talk and all of this focus on the crash and recession and all of these things, there's maybe a little bit too much focus on this kind of negative content. And I do know that when you hear this kind of stuff, it's one of the reasons that I don't read a lot of news, is that it can have this negative impact on your mindset. And you could actually end up in a situation where you are thinking that everything is a doom and gloom, and so I should just bury my head in the sand and just wait for everything to get bubbly again, and then I'll come and start investing. Of course, by that stage, it's too late. You've kind of missed the opportunities to buy at a low price. So do we want to protect our mindset, or do we want to hear more of the negative news? And don't worry, we can protect our own mindset, Gavin. You just keep giving us the bad news. Let me know what you think. Right, so today's episode, the main topic is all about a headline that I read in this afternoon. I was just going through today's newspaper, and I went, and the first on the page 1 of the Irish Times, they're talking about Ireland is building way too many large houses. And that is according to the Irish Green Building Council. Now, if you're a regular listener, you'll know that I'm very much a supporter of sustainability and green initiatives. But I got to say, I felt a kind of a level of pushback that's not normal for me around this whole kind of sustainability and stuff. And that is because for me, I have got 5 kids. My household is 7 people. And when you're in a house of that size, like being told that houses are way too big, that's just like, oof, are you kidding me? Literally, have you tried to live in a house with 7 people? It feels like the walls are closing in on me all the time. And so now my household size is definitely not normal. According to the research here, they say that the average household in Ireland is 2.5 people. And so I imagine the UK is probably very, very similar, if not less, because we probably have a higher birth rate here in Ireland than we do in the UK per head of population. So anyway, I'm going to be covering this report and what they are saying and why. And then I'm just going to give you some of my own perspectives coming from a large family and just growing up. I've always had the privilege of living in quite a large house. And so I'm used to space. And maybe that's playing in my mind. Maybe I've got it all wrong. And maybe you guys listening out there, maybe you're of the view that houses are perfectly fine in terms of size. And so let me know if that happens to be the case. So the report is saying that house sizes need to be cut by 28%, and that construction of, in particular, detached homes is to be discouraged. And the rationale behind all of this is twofold. They say that if Ireland is to stand a chance to meet its climate goals, then we need to build an awful lot more houses on an awful lot less space or less land. And I think this is probably exactly goes for the UK as well. They say that we have got in the Irish system, certainly if we're going to talk about local sort of news, they say that we have huge inefficiencies in the Irish planning system, and that it has allowed for these oversized houses to become the norm. And it's, in fact, I think it's like the planning guidelines suggest that we have to have minimum sizes and things like that. They're saying that if we build at the current level of our densities, and the idea behind the housing strategy for, say, Ireland, for Dublin, is that we need to build 400,000 homes in Dublin, in the County Dublin area, by 2030. So that effectively means that we have got 7 years to build 400,000 homes. Do the math on that, by the way. And if we were to do that with the current densities, that is going to cover an area of 349 square kilometres, which they say equates to about 1/3 of the entire county covered in homes. And so they're saying that is, A, it's not it's not realistic, it's not feasible, but B, it's going to mean that we are way out in terms of our climate goals and in terms of carbon emissions and things like that. Now, according to the report, they said the average new detached home is 244 square meters, which they say is about 3 times the size that is required for the average home. And they say that this is based on the average size of a household is now 2.5 persons per household. And they suggest that the space required per person is only 30 square meters. And that would mean that a 2.5 average household size would mean that you only need 75 square meters per average household. Now, I'm not sure. I mean, it's very simplistic to do that, because if you think about it, like, first of all, there's no such thing as a household of 2.5 people. You're either 2 people or you're 3 people, and they're taking the average. So if you're a 2-person, then that's a 60 square meter would be the perfect size. But if you're a 3-person, then that's a 90 square meter, and they're finding a middle point. So I don't know if that math works. I mean, in terms of averaging, yes, of course, it makes a lot of difference. But in terms of practical, like designing houses, are you building a 3-bedroom house that's 90 square meters, or are you building a 2-bedroom house that's 60 square meters? Because one way or another, you're going to be too small for one or too big for the other. And so I don't know. Now, the house, like, I've got 5 kids. It's hard to go out there and find a house that has 6 bedrooms if you want each of your kids to have their own bedroom. That is just, that doesn't happen. Basically, the kids have to share bedrooms and things like that. But if you wanted to, I suppose your only option is to go out and build your own home, buy a piece of land and build your own home to your own design. But I don't know about you guys. Like, what do you think? Do you think that, like, in my opinion, space is always a problem? And even if my family is 3 times the size of an average household, but I do find that even if I had like just one kid living in the house, that the house is too small, even at that rate. And like, do people want comfort? I think they do. Do people want to have space to swing a cat? The old saying. And when I lived in London, I lived in London for about 1.5 years, and when I was there, myself and my wife now, but at the time we weren't married, and we didn't have any kids at the time, and we were living there on Winchester Street, which is near Victoria Station, so right in the middle of the city, which was great, but it was a very small place, and we had an extra bedroom in case we had people coming over to stay, so it would be nice to be able to put somebody up for the night. But most of the time it was just the 2 of us living. And it was great to have that. But we still had to go and hire a lockup. Down at the end of our street, there was a garage. There was like a parking garage. And they had a lockup area. And you could go down and you could hire a place and pay so much a month to keep your stuff. And so we would keep, boxes of clothes and boxes of, your suitcases if you're traveling. You don't want to have them cluttering up the house. So this was quite normal. But you still needed storage space in an apartment, or in this case, we were on the ground floor of a house, and we needed a lockup just to make the place more comfortable because there wasn't enough storage space. So I find it hard to believe that the average family out there is going to say, yeah, it's perfectly, we would manage in smaller homes. I would think that, if anything, you would look for a home with either more storage space, or certainly that there would be subsidized storage along the M50 or in the industrial centres, because it is not cheap to go and take storage. I was calculating recently, I had a lockup in one of the industrial areas here in Dublin on the M50, and it was in Ballymount, and I was paying every year, I was paying 3,000 a year to keep this space in this lockup. And I can remember, like, the stuff just sits there gathering dust, and occasionally, maybe 3 or 4 times a year, you go and collect the stuff and take it and swap it around or whatever. But I can remember calculating after 10 years of having this lockup, I was saying, that is 30,000 euro I have spent on a space that is just full of boxes. That's just junk, basically. And that, what could you do with 30 grand? I mean, it just makes you think. Now, getting back to the IGBC report, they are saying that the reason behind all of this, the other rational, the reason for their report, is that embodied carbon is the big issue, and that is something I've talked about before in here. Embodied carbons is one of the big issues coming towards us in terms of the construction sector and architects designing, and even looking at refurbishing office buildings, as I am here in East Point at the moment. You're looking at refurbishing an office building. Embodied carbon very much comes into question. And is it more efficient for you to demolish a building and build a new building, or is it immoral of you to demolish a building that all of the concrete and everything that's there was a lot of carbon went into constructing this, and should you not simply be reutilizing or repurposing that existing structure? And that's what a lot of people are doing. The problem is that some of the densities now have gone up. So we have 3-story buildings here that could, you would get a planning permission straight away for 7 or 8 stories. So, but you're not going to be able to build 7 or 8 stories off an existing footprint. So the only option is to demolish the building. But people are suggesting that you shouldn't do that because of embodied carbon. Anyway, it is an interesting topic to kind of delve into, and embodied carbon, it's an issue that's very difficult to get to the bottom of. They are suggesting that terraced houses are the most efficient type of house building, and that semi-detached or detached houses, they have a lot of external walls, and that's where heat escapes. And so the fewer outside walls you have, the more efficient your property is going to be, which is why terraced houses, you have a house on one side, you have a house on the other. So mid-terraced houses suffer no heat loss through the sides. Obviously, the front of the house and the rear of the house, they'll lose a certain amount of heat through that. And certainly I can vouch for that. That is most definitely true in all of the different houses I've lived in over the years. You just know that the central rooms, the bedrooms that are in the middle of the house that don't have very many external walls, they are always much warmer. And I know even the house that I live in at the moment, my daughter lives in an outside room, and it's always cold, whereas the rest of the house could be quite warm. And so that does make a difference. Obviously, insulation standards make a big difference, but the end wall is always the problem. And when you get into apartment buildings, apartments that are mid-level are much more efficient as well in terms of carbon. Now, carbon in an apartment building is better than terraced houses, but mid-level is the best because they don't have any heat escaping through the floor, and they don't have any heat escaping through the ceiling. And that is because you've got an apartment above that's heated and you have an apartment below that's heated. Whereas if you're in the ground floor, then heat is going down through the floor into the ground, and vice versa. On the penthouse, you've got a big roof that has to be well insulated, and even when it's insulated, it loses a certain amount of heat. So apartments, mid-level. And the worst offenders by far, according to the report, are detached bungalows. And that is because they have a huge amount of external surface. And so they are effectively like building a penthouse apartment on the ground. You've got the heat escaping through the ground, the heat escaping through the roof, and you've got 4 walls that are, it's a detached house, so all 4 walls are external. And so those are the biggest culprits in terms of carbon emissions. Interesting, terraced houses come second to mid-floor apartments, and that is down to the fact that when you're in the mid-floor, you don't have the problem of the ground floor or the roof being the heat loss source. Now, I'm curious about this particular report. They did not get into the method of construction, and certainly I don't think you can just make a generalist kind of rule like this, because if you're building a big apartment building, we'll say, that is built with a lot of concrete, lift cores and stair cores and all that there is an awful lot more carbon that has gone into constructing that than you have if you were building, say, terraced homes that are built with timber frame construction. Because timber frame construction would have an awful lot less concrete in its use, and therefore I would have thought that is a much more efficient in terms of construction method Anyway, I'd love to know your thoughts on this, because this to me is really controversial, because we all want to do better in terms of green and stuff, but do we want smaller houses? Personally, I cannot see myself ever downsizing. Perhaps when the kids are all grown up, yes, but certainly not. And I have a place in Spain, and it's very generous, like like a nice big villa. And I'm actually envious that I can't live there all year round, because it's much bigger than the homes that we have here in Ireland. And so I'd love to hear your view. Leave a comment down below or send me something through social media. Just let me know. Do you think houses are too big? Are the houses in your area, whether you live in Ireland or the UK or wherever you're listening in from, what are the house sizes like? Are they too big? Are they too small? What do you think? Do you long for a smaller home, or do you long for a larger home? And I know where I stand. You know where I stand. I'm going to be moving into a brand new detached home very soon. So I'm definitely one of the guilty parties. But again, I have a big family. It's about 3 times the size of the average household, according to this report. And so for me, I am personally happy to pay for, like, it's going to be a very, very highly efficient energy rated house. It's going to be A rated. And so I'll pay for that, and I'm prepared to do that. That's my bit that I'm doing. But love to know your views on this. All right, guys, let me know your thoughts, and I will see you in the next one. Thank you for tuning in to another episode of Behind the Facade. If you found this episode useful, please leave a review over on iTunes, or indeed share it with a friend. If you have any questions or comments, or if you'd like to ask for a topic to be covered, please leave a comment in the notes below, or the description below, or indeed you can connect with me through my Facebook group, and that is called Behind the Facade Community. Alternatively, social media is where you'll find me, Gavin J. Gallagher, for all my social media stuff. And I also have a website by the same name, gavinjgallagher.com. And if you go in there, make sure you sign up for the weekly newsletter. That's the email list you just put in, join my tribe. And when you're in there, you get a weekly newsletter from myself. And there's no spam in there. It's just, I post the latest podcast, the latest blog post, the latest video, and the latest live stream. And so just keep you up to date on all of the content I'm putting out. All right, guys, talk to you all next week.